Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for another discussion. Today we have two fantastic guests in the studio, Carlos Rivas and Jose Rodriguez. These are two lawyers here in El Salvador who provide legal services for the Bitcoin industry through their firm, Nodeman. And gentlemen, I want to jump right into it. Carlos, Jose, what are your thoughts on the recent loan package with the IMF and the amendments made to the Bitcoin law?
Well, interesting how after a couple of years of the government trying to get a beneficial treatment from the IMF and preparing like all the ground to this package finally get materialized, it's a positive thing. Okay, El Salvador as a country returning to the capital markets, to the bilateral entities, accepting how the conditions and seeing like the improvements the country have, basically have opened the doors to approximately 3.5 billion package of different multilateral entities, IMF, World Bank, Inter-American Development Bank. Yeah, every entity will have their own conditions, covenants, etc. But it will provide a lot of oxygen to the finances of the country, and we'll have to keep improving what the government has achieved without having that type of financing. That's a lot. Okay. About what things need to be amended or modified to do this agreement with the IMF has caused a lot of noise, a lot of confusion, especially on the Bitcoin industry and the area we basically work in our day-to-day activities. The first thing is the Bitcoin law amendment. Okay, that in practically in the day-to-day activity, nothing has changed. Okay, the most appealing element of the regulation is there is no capital gains. Okay, and that article, that benefit in the regulation is still the same. No capital gains. That is one of the most appealing things on the regulation for this country, and why different companies, investors, and other type of stakeholders decide to set up different type of entities or acquire properties or do any type of investment. Okay, so that remain the same. Also, we advise, we work in a day-to-day activity with wallets, payment providers, and other entities that are involved in the day-to-day activity on the accepting, paying, and do all activities related to Bitcoin. And we have not seen any decrease on all the population that it has learned and has basically adopted as a way to do business Bitcoin. We have not seen any decrease on the volumes that they um, expand in their daily merchants. Okay, wholesalers, supermarkets, hardware stores, etc. They are still at the end of the day doing three, four, $5,000 of people expanding their Bitcoin on their goods or services. So to me, and having all this information in the due to our job that we receive day to day, yeah, the government decide to comply with these covenants that definitely were there in the agreements they sign. Okay, they need to comply, but to the daily user, okay, or the people involved in the industry, that has not happened or had any negative effect. Okay.
Awesome. Jose, any thoughts?
Yeah, especially on the position of El Salvador. All right, for me, this is a way to consolidate a first mover advantage globally. If you think it, there's no other country able to play the Bitcoin game and play with IMF at the level of El Salvador is doing. So for me, it's a consolidation of what El Salvador has built up to this day. That also means these slight changes into the Bitcoin law doesn't have an impact, right? When you go and jump into Bitcoin service providers, specific operators of the ecosystem, the rules stay the same for all of them. That basically means that if you want to be in El Salvador and operate a Bitcoin company, well, there are very clear rules that you have to follow. And the slight change in the law is basically stating that Bitcoin keeps being a legit circulating asset. So you can pay obligations, acquire obligations. Is very slight that you cannot pay taxes with Bitcoin anymore. But why would you like to do it in the first place, right? In any case, El Salvador is not forcing anyone to use Bitcoin, right? I guess it's part of being sovereign, the decision to use it or not. And that's kind of the way of the law is written now. So I think it's beneficial for the whole ecosystem. And at the same time, it's a consolidation of El Salvador's position as a Bitcoin country and how all the rules around it are still the most attractive in the whole earth for Bitcoin service provider companies and investors as well.
Awesome. So I guess to summarize here from what I'm gathering, right? These concessions were minor in actual, in the practical day-to-day use, but what they did was cement El Salvador's position on the world stage, as well as, secure the funds in order to further develop this country into, the vision that, this government has, right? Is that correct? Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. And so there is some ambiguity around the idea of Bitcoin being legal tender here. The way I see it is that the capital gains tax is probably the biggest factor there. The actual designation of it being legal tender then is just kind of a nice thing to have. But at the same time, if you can spend your Bitcoin, earn your Bitcoin and spend your Bitcoin, then it's effectively still a currency. It just doesn't have legal status. Is that right?
I do have some thoughts around it, and we've been, both Carlos and I, talking a lot around this. And the reality is, having Bitcoin as a legit payment method, right, which is one way to look at it, doesn't change the fact that you can, in El Salvador, right, use Bitcoin for different things, right? Having a Bitcoin law, no matter if the law says it's tender or legit circulating asset, in practical means is the same, right? So when you can pay and acquire obligations using Bitcoin at different levels, meaning you can invest, you can use your Bitcoin to acquire other assets, that's something that you cannot do in every country. Having a very clear framework of legal rules to do it, it's also something that provides certainty for Bitcoin holders. So yeah, around that slight change, initially you can tell it could even be beneficial to not compare Bitcoin to the US dollar, which is the way it was written before, right? So having a special treatment, which is what we have, a special beneficial treatment for Bitcoin holders and Bitcoin ventures. That's kind of what the Bitcoin economy needs, right? And in the end, it's us, right, Bitcoin holders, who are in charge of incentivizing Bitcoin adoption. Meaning you cannot expect to go to a country and by law pay everything in Bitcoin, right? That's not the Bitcoin spirit. In the end, you want to incentivize the economy to adopt it, and by itself and by its benefits to spread out and adopt it as a legit circulating asset. And this is what we have in El Salvador. So I guess it is beneficial. And even if this word is not anymore in the law, like tender, it's expressly legit to use Bitcoin in the economy of El Salvador.
Yeah, like more of an organic bottom-up approach now than through the law.
Yes.
Okay. I want to get into you guys. All right. So you guys have a law firm or a legal firm for Bitcoin businesses. Well, let's hear a little bit of the origin story.
Well, definitely how we could label it. Um, we provide regulatory services for the Bitcoin industry. Okay, so we receive a range of different requirements from a range of different entities, companies, mostly foreign, that want to learn more about the regulation, see if, for example, their business models are viable, or basically direct establish, set up subsidiaries. There are a way of different regulations that if you do the right match, okay, they can also add also other tax benefits. It doesn't matter if you are a Bitcoin company, okay? So basically, is learn more. What are you planning to do in the country and try to find the best fit? And it has been very challenging, but very interesting. Nodeman has more than 1 year already in the market. We had the opportunity to participate in different relevant conferences around the globe. Last year was Switzerland, Tokyo, US, Abu Dhabi, um, and well, now next week we'll be participating in New York, the Bitcoin Investor Week. So we are planning, we're trying to basically um, meet the right people, get the right connection to share with them the amazing regulatory framework that we have, so they can also decide to at least explore something in this jurisdiction.
Interesting. Wow. So are you noticing any decline of interest because of the law, or is it still, full steam ahead?
Well, it's a great question. I guess we have received a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see a reduction of interest. I see doubts. So at Nodeman, we have kind of taken responsibility on explaining, the ecosystem and on these slight changes, right, which I mentioned. So definitely, even when you can imagine that people won't come anymore, we saw just the opposite from January to this day. Let's say the interest in El Salvador is just increasing every day. And I guess that's what we, as a country, are also aiming for, right? At Nodeman, we basically help from end-to-end processes, from Bitcoiners, and they're not only Bitcoin service providers or operators itself, but also Bitcoin holders, who wants to be in a place where it's friendly to use Bitcoin, to hold it, not being afraid that your government is gonna try to take it away, right? So the rules that we have from the legal services perspective opens a wide variety of services that Bitcoiners can use in very clear ways. So it's some funny way to tell this is it's kind of a playground for Bitcoin. You can literally explore the regulation and use it on different ways. We have come up with stuff like Bitcoin treasuries in El Salvador. Like this is something we've heard, right, in New York for corporations such as MicroStrategy, now Strategy B. But there's no better place to have a Bitcoin treasury than El Salvador, because you can literally have a special purpose vehicle where you can register your Bitcoin on a balance sheet, accountancy rules for Bitcoin, special accountancy rule for Bitcoin, and deploy whatever strategy you want from there. You can acquire other assets using Bitcoin in your treasury. You can accumulate more Bitcoin if you like, and capital gains free, right? So in the long term, I guess we are in a great moment in time. So Bitcoiners should approach and explore what we have in El Salvador, and then from there we will have a lot to build from this baseline.
Awesome. So you guys mentioned that you've been kind of around the world, different conferences and stuff like that. What's your take then as far as El Salvador's position on the global stage?
Super nice.
Yeah.
Good question. Well, the country right now has a huge presence in all the media for positive things. Of course, the conferences we have attended are Bitcoin only, so there is also a main topic to talk about. But the takeaways we can like conclude of visiting all these countries is um, high interest of the country. People really wanted to know how they can do business here. A lot of people wants to relocate also. I hope the migration regulation try to modify it on a better sense. They are kind of rigid at the moment, but nevertheless, as the way they are now, a lot of people come, relocate, become temporary residents, etc. People also wanting to know more which other type of businesses they can establish here in the country. They can fund it with Bitcoin, but they don't want to basically provide any financial services. Mostly have been interested in tourism, okay, or hospitality service, or even industries that they have not been like super common in this country, but they have the resources. Okay, so they feel that this is a suitable jurisdiction because as Bitcoiners, they are not going to be, as Jose mentioned, chased out by the government or pay high taxes every year, even for, I don't know, governments that wanted to tax you for not even unrealized gains. That's super painful. So it's like they consider this jurisdiction as um, suitable place for build whatever that they are planning to.
Yeah. Awesome. And then as far as a regulatory framework, then in regards to other countries around the world, where does El Salvador stand?
That's something we get asked a lot, like how to compare jurisdictions, right? And this is not something we are the only ones doing, but there are even specialists around the globe comparing jurisdictions. And there's recently a report that mentioned that El Salvador was the top two jurisdiction for ventures around Bitcoin or digital assets. Uh, Top one was Switzerland. So you can imagine why. And the question is valid, right? El Salvador has never been a capital market top jurisdiction. But once you start understanding how the vision of building capital markets on top of decentralized technologies such as Bitcoin and other decentralized technologies as well, um, there's not a lot of jurisdictions with clear rules on building on top of the vision of digital capital markets, and especially the centralized ones. And even when that vision may be very early in time, um, the same as 100 or 200 years ago, stock exchanges were something new. Imagine where first movers on digital capital markets could go in the next 50 years, for example. And in this case, we are the first mover. So if El Salvador has a way to compare, I would say is certainty is the first thing, right? Not having a government that's against Bitcoin, and especially having avenues, legal avenues to build capital markets on top of that. That opens El Salvador to the world, right? The opportunity to attract and become attractive for institutional money and all these avenues that maybe we have never been in, right? So it's our job as well from the perspective of applying these regulations on helping institutional money investors, venture capitalists to see and prove and verify that in El Salvador it's possible to build capital markets to benefit from products like digital decentralized products built on top of Bitcoin vision in El Salvador. And around that, I would say it is true how El Salvador is kind of top of mind jurisdiction in the world to deploy this type of venture.
Awesome. So you're mentioning other kind of decentralized platforms to build off of here. through our discussion, not just Bitcoin. Is that something that El Salvador's focused on, more of a digital asset space as well as Bitcoin?
I would say El Salvador has a very clear vision on building on top of Bitcoin, right? And that called the attention of the world at the moment when Bitcoin law came out. So it is not easy to avoid scammers and people willing to enter a country that's Bitcoin friendly. And some gray areas could appear. And people with not good intentions and shitcoiners could enter the country with a different vision, right? So the government thought of this, and to prevent this happening, they issued a regulation called the Digital Assets Law. It basically has a regulatory framework for ventures different than Bitcoin to ask for permission in order to operate. Different as the treatment of Bitcoin, right? As a legit circulating asset. You don't have to ask for permission if you want to hold Bitcoin. But if you want to deploy any projects regarding any other type of digital asset non-Bitcoin related, there's a special regulator called the National Commission of Digital Assets where you can use that framework and basically build on top of that. So it doesn't mean the country is focused on other things that are not Bitcoin. It means El Salvador has a certain framework for preventing stuff that is not necessarily good for the Bitcoin industry. But at the same time, you will have a lot of interest in the centralized technologies, not only Bitcoin, that have been proven to be useful to deploy digital assets.
Are those like securities or like, let's just say tokenized real estate? Is that kind of an example of that?
Yeah, definitely. Tokenizing real world asset has high appealing on the capital markets hubs, and El Salvador having a very clear regulation and path to how to tokenize real world assets basically put us in a very relevant position. Uh, we have worked with traditional business groups of El Salvador that have been operating and having their businesses here for 50, 80 years, okay, 100 in some cases, and they are willing, they are open to explore this new type of alternative financing that will make more profitable their business, will also help them to um, get involved in new ventures, not on what they have been building all this time. And for us, that has been very, very positive. Finding out that these business groups are interested to also enter in this new type of alternative financing, not only foreigners or people from jurisdiction that they are used to get financed by those methods. So to us, as we are still very early in this, but is very fulfilling to see local business groups want to learn more and develop or deploy new business here in El Salvador also.
And it's also very interesting the broad spectrum that you can deploy from these alternative regulations, right? So tokenizing assets is one of those things. The idea behind it, behind the regulation, is having solid underlying assets behind whatever transaction that could be named tokenizing assets. So
not meme coins.
yeah, for example, right? We don't want meme coins to be deployed from a regulation in El Salvador. But if you have real world assets like solid, financial instruments that you can build on top of a decentralized technology, including, for example, layer twos on top of Bitcoin, such as Liquid Network, you can do it. You asked something initially about securities, right? So this is very interesting, especially from the regulation of El Salvador, because our regulation expressly says that digital assets are not securities. So that's very different from a lot of jurisdictions. and it avoids confusion because you can build digital securities in other countries, not necessarily on top of a blockchain, for example. So that means that confusion can lead to, misguiding investors and offering uncertain conditions. And a meme coin, for example, could appear, and we don't want that. So our regulation expressly says that digital assets are not securities, because we also have a separate regulation, especially for electronic securities, which is another story. So if you want to build, products on top of Bitcoin, such as, for example, you can tokenize stock on top of a layer 2 of Bitcoin and offer it in capital markets. That's something possible in El Salvador. And you can come up with a lot of creative financial instruments using DLTs and the Bitcoin standard to create capital markets. So it's a wide avenue. And the big idea behind this is making El Salvador a place for money, right? So I think we are on the right track.
Interesting. What are your thoughts on Tether moving their headquarters here? Can we expect more major moves like this? What's your thoughts on that?
We are super excited.
Yeah.
Definitely. Super happy. I think a lot of people from different industries will have an opportunity due to their expertise they have. It doesn't matter if they have like never been involved in the industry, but they have the right skills. They possibly will be able to access to better paying jobs to get involved in an industry of digital assets are the future. Okay, that is, you can question that. Okay, and having a company as big as Tether, basically relocating here, trying to build this huge complex for offices, um, inviting other people in the industry, trying to relocate also to their new facilities. Um, to me, they have a huge strategy for the country, and also to me, one of the main reasons they decide to relocate in this country is the amazing regulatory framework we have for what they are building. Okay, that's the best way how to put it. So I think they will launch a lot of things to be used globally from this country, and they will need Salvadorian hands to educate, or if they are already educated and learn about this industry, basically their skills will improve. Okay.
I
Any
agree.
thoughts?
I agree. I mean, and we will see more players, I would say. Tether is kind of, global first mover, and I'm sure they will inspire a lot of other companies. We have seen more than 200 companies in the last 4 years, regulated entities. That doesn't mean there are not a lot more Bitcoiners coming in, but imagine there's about 200 regulated entities as Bitcoin service providers. So Tether being here is definitely a proof that El Salvador is a place to be for the Bitcoin industry.
Yeah, we've also seen a few major players, right? We saw some Silicon Valley guys here the other day, like Mark Andreessen and Michael Saylor was here.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts there? You starting to see more major players move into El Salvador. What's that about in your eyes?
Come on, imagine. I think Michael Saylor, before Bitcoin law, he didn't even knew where El Salvador was,
Yes.
maybe. And now you see, Michael Saylor visiting El Salvador, looking at what's going on here. I'm sure he's not here just to look, right? There's something behind it. Every player that's visited El Salvador, met with the local authorities, a year later at least, they have deployed something. So having this type of stakeholder looking at El Salvador, it's already something. But there's enough proof that they are not only looking, right? They want part of it. They want to be part of the builders on top of the vision of being a Bitcoin country. And I think that's very powerful in terms of who wants to be here, right? I can tell you some other players that um, have been around, maybe reserving the names, but the public ones, right? You know, there's Bitfinex here. We have Binance registered here in El Salvador as well. And well, we've been dealing with global players that maybe are not out there yet, but they are already here.
They're dipping their toes in, huh?
Yes. So we will see, I would say the next 3 to 5 years are going to be very, very appealing and exciting to be in El Salvador.
Well, let's talk about that. What do you guys see then in the next 3 to 5 years? How do you see El Salvador evolving? And then you guys are both from here, right? This is your country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Born and raised.
So, and also, how do you like what's happening? You know, are you guys, obviously you're for it, but just in general, you know, what's the sentiment around that?
Well, for the first, I'm sorry, for the next 3-5 years, we're involved in different regulation drafting and things for what is coming. So it's super excited. Okay, very happy, very optimistic. I have always chased since many years ago venture capital building here, regulations around it, basically set up the right conditions for the traditional money in this country to understand how they can make more of their funds invest in startups or corporate venture capital, etc. So to me, it's not just people looking around, as Jose mentioned, all these big names that are coming here. I hope they are planning to be like a amazing jurisdiction for the venture capital for investing in different type of stages, different type of companies, setting up different type of corporate structure. It's basically what they are looking in the different jurisdictions that they invest, but they have the direct contact here to try to set up something that will be useful for their business activities. Okay, so that's amazing. Okay, then different names will be here. Okay, at the moment there are really big names in their process of obtaining their licenses, regulations, hiring a couple of local people. I don't know, 6-7 months, all that will be released. They will be public with their licenses and are very relevant actors in the industry we work. Okay, and you know about in the day-to-day life, as you know, born and raised, it's also very you had a higher relief of being super safe, super secure, that you can do different type of activities that previously wasn't possible. You need to basically visit other countries or take vacation in other places in order to have this type of experiences. Okay, yeah, not everything comes free. Yeah, Salvador is a country that is 20-30% expensive that couple of years ago, but you need to balance it. Okay, so it's to me it's super optimistic.
And you,
Yeah.
Jose?
My thoughts are, you know, from the professional standpoint, growth, right? We have been experiencing growth since Bitcoin law. We decided to, you know, dive really deep into the industry. So that's a immediate reflection on, you know, our personal paths as professionals, but then replicating that into our teams who are, you know, other lawyers, people who maybe have never heard of Bitcoin in the past before 2021. And now they are, you know, a team of very knowledgeable people who already understand Bitcoin, right? They tell us now, hey, why don't you pay me in Bitcoin this time? So for us, that's like, you know, kind of spreading the message, right? But at the same time, personally, around how life is becoming different than it was. El Salvador now is just the way how people look at you in other countries, right? 10 years ago, saying you were from El Salvador was some kind of stereotype. It wasn't good. Now, saying that you live in El Salvador is like, hey, dude, I want to be there as well. And for us, that has become, I think we're very lucky to be in this position, right? And we are taking it seriously as well, right? A very responsible way to um, help from the regulation, from the legal services, from our, heads on leaders in the industry as well, on helping, Bitcoin thrive in El Salvador from different points of view. So I see the next 5 years will be kind of it will set the grounds for the next 50, where I hope I can have my boat with the Bitcoin logo on top, right? So that's kind of what I want. So I think it's going to happen for a lot of people building on top of that vision.
Amazing. So a lot of growth yet to happen here over the next few decades.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. You said people want to come down here. Hey, I want to be part of this, right? And you mentioned that, it's still kind of restrictive, or there's still some hurdles that you got to jump over. Can we talk about residency? Is that some legal services that you provide? Yeah. So let's talk about that. What if someone wants to come down here? What's the process of becoming a resident?
Okay. The first thing is, before like doing any type of investment or something like that, I always advise come to the country. Okay, take a 15-day, 30-day trip, meet the locals, understand how the day-to-day life is in here, etc. The tourist visa lasts for 180 days, so you can back and
You could
back
say
and
6
forth.
months, basically.
Yeah. And that basically allow you to plan any type of a structure, business, etc., without worrying about, hey, I need to return, I need to get off the area and restart my time. And a lot of investors basically are in this country under their tourist visa. Okay, but for corporate, family reasons, financial reasons, etc., some of them decide to start the temporary process of being, the process for being a temporary resident. Okay. In order to be a temporary resident, the fastest approach and the best way is to set up a one person LLC. Okay, not a complex structure, corporate structure. A one person LLC, just to submit the paperwork, and this company basically employs you. So they will support all your living expenses, etc., etc. So that way, for migration authorities, you can basically show basically an application, a stronger application. Okay, that you like real are going to do any business activity legit in this country. The problem is that for temporary residents, every year, okay, you can only leave the country for 90 days, continuous or non-continuous. Okay, for people that definitely decide to relocate and start a life here, that's no issue for them. But a lot of investors, business people, or even tourists, digital nomads, etc., they need to have the flexibility to go and back, going back, and but they want a more legal status. Okay, so that's a challenge. We have work on trying to submit.
Can I get some clarity here? You're saying that if you get residency or temporary residency, you have to be here in order to maintain that status.
9 months.
You have to be 9 months out of
Yeah.
the year. Okay.
Yeah. So for many people, it's a practical relocation, and they are not ready to practically relocate. That's for year one. Year two of temporary residency, okay, you have the same time limit, okay, 9 months being in the country. But on the year three and above, you have more flexibility, okay. In some cases, you can be in the country. You can leave the country up to 2 years, okay, without the proper authorization, okay. On the year three, you have more flexible time to leave. Year four also, And on year 5, you can apply to two things: be a permanent resident, okay, and then you will have to renew your card every 5 years, not every year, or you wait a little more and then you can apply for citizenship. Okay,
Interesting.
that's in a summary the process and like the big challenge different people faces, the time you need to be in the country.
That provides a lot of clarity for me. It's the first time I've had it so neatly summarized. So appreciate that. But do you see then things like that changing? Do you see it becoming easier, or is that something that you imagine will be kind of the criteria for a while?
No, I think in the short term, there will be some amendments. We have seen announcements from the government. They are trying to incentivize, um, let's say, different type of profile of expats to relocate here to expedite their citizenship process or basically a legal status. Again, there are so many balls in the air that it's impossible to address all these things. But I hope that maybe this year some amendment to the migration law could be approved and make public to address all these situation of different profiles that they definitely could add value to the country, build something. But again, the migration framework is a challenge for them.
Gotcha. Um, yeah. What do you make of other programs? There was a mention of passport program and stuff like that. Is what's the status there? Do you guys have anything there?
Well, the only program I'm aware is the visa freedom program.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely, yes, you can apply to citizenship after a complete screening.
Mm-hmm.
It's a donation to the government of El Salvador of $1 million. And if you like pass the screening and you have the funds to pay, you can obtain the citizenship. And we have seen in the industry different people that have gone that road and acquired their citizenship, mostly from North America. They People retire, they have their businesses already, they are like a second, third generation, and they have decided to pursue this program. But I'm not aware of other programs that help you, like citizenship by investment or something like that in other jurisdiction. Uh, I hope something is in the process as we speak, but I'm not aware of it.
Awesome. Um, let's talk about taxes. This is a question I got, right? You guys mentioned favorable, tax strategies and so forth that are there for people and companies. Can you talk more on that specifically for an individual or a business?
Yeah, of course. So there are, I would say, three important tiers for benefiting from the tax rules that we have. The initial one is addressing specifically Bitcoiners. This is something that comes out because of how painful it is to report Bitcoin holdings in other jurisdictions, right? As you may know, some countries may have 40 something percent over capital gains, some of those up to 52, meaning if you decide to report your Bitcoin holdings in other jurisdictions, well, government is taking a good portion of the gains. And as well, Bitcoiners are aware, and we hope the path keeps building on top of that vision. Well, Bitcoin is going to the moon in the next years. So holding Bitcoin in jurisdictions where the government wants to take half of those gains is not necessarily good. So El Salvador came out with this special rule for expressing the law that capital gains on top of Bitcoin are free. All right. That opens a wide variety of ways on using your Bitcoin. It could be through a treasury, as I mentioned, where you can hold your Bitcoin, not sell it, because if you sell it, then capital gains, in this case, even when they are free, well, then you're not doing it long term, right? So my suggestion for using a treasury is having a strategy at least for the midterm. Whenever you want to invest that Bitcoin, you shouldn't sell it. You should pay with Bitcoin. That way, you still get capital gains free over your holdings, but you still can use it for other investments. So that's the simplest way, right? But we have some other avenues, right? So Bitcoin service providers do pay taxes because the reason, and we get this question a lot, right?
Real quick, what would classify as a Bitcoin service provider?
Yeah, so Bitcoin law and its regulations specify there are four main types of Bitcoin service providers. These are digital wallets, Bitcoin only, payment processors, custodians, and which is the other exchanges, right? Including OTC services. So being said, these four are money operators in El Salvador, right? So it's very hard to justify why a legit circulating asset in El Salvador, such as Bitcoin, the same as dollar, shouldn't pay taxes, right? So the way the government decided to treat this is, hey, if you are a Bitcoin service provider, and remember this started as Bitcoin being legal tender the same as the dollar, so it was very hard to justify not taxing Bitcoin, and especially Bitcoin service provider activities. But we have also assessed some relevant players who have a combined operation. So for example, imagine something as a Bitcoin wallet who has a service of swapping to stablecoin, for example. Any other asset that is not Bitcoin is considered a digital asset. So you can obtain a digital asset service provider license. This is a separate avenue where you can have a full tax-free cycle. The idea behind it is to incentivize capital markets and money ventures that passes the screening and the rules around deploying this type of digital asset in the country. So if you combine these two licenses, then you have a very interesting panorama. Not to pay taxes, and this is zero, including capital gain, income tax, VAT, dividend tax, withholding tax for paying abroad, shareholders tax, and also you don't have to withhold returns on investments for acquirers of investments issued through the digital assets law. So this is a very interesting scenario for a lot of types of ventures, but still there's a third avenue, right, for companies who may not be Bitcoin service providers or digital asset service providers, meaning wide activities of exchange or OTCs or any other type of yields activities or lending activities. You may be a simple technology company. Maybe you provide infrastructure for these other entities. So you are a decentralized ledger technology company. So the government also wants to incentivize this type of activity. So they issued the law to incentivize innovation and manufacturing for technologies. This is a 15-year tax-free period, except for VAT. All the other taxes are included. So that means if you are, for example, a company who provides the backend infrastructure of a Bitcoin wallet, you can apply into this regulation and be 15-year tax-free. The same if you provide the backend infrastructure for exchange, for example, or for a company that's tokenizing assets and you provide this backend technology, but you are not operating that technology, you are simply providing it or building it, you can have a 15-year tax free period. And also there are some other areas such as AI, cloud computing, software development, cloud computing ventures, which are not necessarily Bitcoin related, but at the same time could be, right? So there's a wide variety of ways you can benefit from the local framework and not pay taxes.
And this is so if you're a technology company, if you're developing like an AI company or something like that, it doesn't have to be Bitcoin related or related to digital assets to still be able to qualify for that tax treatment. Is that right?
That's right. I mean, you can deploy, you can develop technology and commercialize it, not Bitcoin related, and you can apply to this regulation.
Interesting.
There's also other industry that the regulation include, that is cybersecurity, okay, and has also another tax benefits, that is custom taxes or import duties. So imagine, I don't know, you need a 5 MacBooks Pro super with high quality specifications, because I don't know, you will provide XYZ service that needs that hardware. Under the benefits, you can import those equipments to the country, and there will be zero tax on customs. Okay, or imagine you are a payment processing company or a Bitcoin processing company, and you're going to be give to your clients a small POSs or any device to process the payments. You need those hardware to provide the service, that is also tax incentive on the customs.
Or miners, right?
Yeah.
For example.
And so this is where somebody would reach out to you guys, and you guys could help them navigate that, regulatory framework. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. We will need to learn more about their business model or what they are planning to build. But yeah, there are big period of times. 15 years is an amazing term to develop a business, earn, get invested, or even an exit the business, and basically get your funds returned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you guys think El Salvador needs right now?
Well, I think there are several things, of course, but if you would ask me that question 3 or 4 years ago, my initial thought would be safe. We already have that. So one of the biggest challenges is already passed. So I would say, especially for incentivizing Bitcoin adoption, I would focus a lot of efforts on educating local people. The reason is it's kind of a paradox for people like Carlos and me leading Nodeman, looking at how hard is for local people to buy the Bitcoin vision, right? And there are several reasons um, around that, but I would say education would solve it, and spreading that message with solid knowledge would make a lot more people in El Salvador to benefit from this vision and become better in the next decade, right? No matter if it's related to their wealth or to the way they live or see life or money. But I would, put a lot of effort on education in all levels, right? All levels. Lawyers, technologists, people who make food, everyone should learn more about Bitcoin. And the second big topic for me, it would be going to the mind of not being in El Salvador is anything bad anymore. So people should think of becoming or being Salvadorians as something good, right? So it can be broadcasted, and I think people should start to think outside El Salvador, which is something we have proven to be successful from a lot of points of view.
Yeah. Let me piggyback off that question. What businesses do you think should come over here to El Salvador and, start their operations? What businesses does El Salvador need?
Mostly tech-based businesses. When you ask what we consider the country needs, to me, the main thing is economic growth. Okay, and that you will only achieve it by investment. So the government is doing their job, trying to set up the right environment for people to come, to try to build, to relocate, etc. But to me, the what this country needs, uh, besides education, okay, also on the Bitcoin side, but also on the tech side, okay. Yeah, there are certain groups, okay, that they are digital nomads. They are hired by people from or companies abroad and are working in tech-based companies. But yeah, we need to escalate that. If we manage, I don't know, to grow 25, 30% of the labor hand that is tech savvy, definitely high paying jobs, and the investors or the companies we're trying to um, make to come, relocate, or even start here, by Salvadorian business people, uh, will come, will appear. And again, those wages are 5, 6 times higher than the minimum wage of El Salvador.
Interesting. Any other thoughts? Anything else we should cover in your mind?
Well, if you allow me, I think that something that is very important to, put on the table for everyone listening is be aware of the existing of very beneficial regulatory framework for not only Bitcoiners, but as Carlos was saying, technology companies in El Salvador have, I would say, one of the best landscapes to thrive. And exploring, scouting, visiting is one relevant side of things. And I would say being here would make you initially wants to stay. If you can't stay, leave a portion of what you have and help the Bitcoin vision to thrive. That's kind of the things I would say are responsibility of the ones who already understood what's going on and what's coming in the next 20, 30, 40 years, and help others build on top of that.
All right. Let me see. I did get some other questions. One question is about Chivo. If Chivo is now going to be, I guess, sold off, or I don't know what's happening with that. Maybe you guys can shed some light on that. Are there going to be other processors that are going to allow, I guess, merchants to swap their Bitcoin for dollars?
Yeah, about the Chivo information, definitely the only information we have or we have received is the ones we have seen on social media or the news or when the IMF announcement was made public. But yeah, had some issues. Okay, but basically that was positive for other corporations that are also in the street to show their advantages, show their services, and I think a lot of users already in the industry find out that there is a wide range of options that will provide the same swapping services, the same payment processes system, the same wallet and digital account creation services. So yeah, I hope for the best, whatever happened for that project.
You don't think it's going to affect anything?
No, not at all.
Okay.
We deal with a lot of relevant players on the market, and they have the capability and the resources to take care of big part of the population that possibly will no longer be using Chivo services.
Gotcha. And then one more listener question we had was, do you have to pay VAT taxes and income taxes if you're operating in Bitcoin?
Oh yeah, you need to. Okay, the only tax benefits that the regulation provides is capital gains, and yeah, there's a whole structure we will explain around that. But if you are a business operator of a Bitcoin service provider, and for example, you are providing processing payments, your commission it's has a value added tax on it, so you need to pay. If you make 25,000, 30,000 a month on only commissions for swapping payment processes, you need to pay the value added tax, okay, and also the income tax at the next year.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, I think that's all the questions we got from our listeners. Guys, this has been a fantastic conversation. I can't thank you guys enough for coming in, providing clarity. You know, there's been all these questions regarding the Bitcoin law, also around residency, and then also about the future of El Salvador. And I think you guys did a really good job of clearing a lot of stuff up. I really appreciate you coming on. How can people find you? How can people get in touch with you?
Well, I think the best way is going in through our two social media, which is the only ones we use. So you can find us at LinkedIn at Nodeman and at X Nodeman BTC. And well, emails, which is a very good way to reach us immediately anytime. So it's very easy. j@nodeman.co and c@nodeman.co.
Simple.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. And